time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
On a Thursday, and so good to have you with us. A lot to do over the next 60 minutes. A Thursday night NFL preview, which is great for those of you that get to actually watch the show before the Thursday night game. If you're watching us after, you can see if we were right or wrong. It's fun either way. We'll have that coming up in odds and ends. Something to consider. I will cede the segment to Sam Yarnell. That could go one of two ways. We all know what those are. So we got that coming up for you. Also, Noah Dalzell stops by the show, our good friend from SB Nation. She covers the Celtics, also the WNBA. She has written a lengthy piece over for SB Nation on A'ja Wilson, who is going to likely be the WNBA most valuable player. We'll get some thoughts with her on that, the WNBA at large. Maybe slip in a Celtics question as well. Could you believe it? The NBA season, like, there's the NHL. The NHL's starting in like 2 days. Preseason games. Like, what the? Which means the NBA is not far behind. So we'll have plenty to talk about there as well. Hall of Fame potential or Hall of Fame nominees, candidates have been announced, and there's some notables there that we'll get to coming up. But we start things out in Major League Baseball, Sam Yarnell, where two teams have punched their ticket to the postseason, those two teams being the Yankees and the Brewers. The Yankees doing it last night in dramatic fashion in extra innings in a win in Seattle, and the Brewers doing it on a walk-off as well. So the Brewers and Yankees headed to the postseason. By the way, that Yankee game featured a play I don't think I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah. So you had Julio Rodriguez standing on third in extra innings. Yankees up 2-1. It's first and third, nobody out for the Mariners in the bottom of the 10th. Yankees are in trouble. You get a swing and miss from, I think, Randy Arozarena, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But swing and miss from Randy Arozarena. The bat goes flying. It's strike three. He's out. The bat almost hits Julio Rodriguez, who jumps away far away from third base to get away from the bat coming his way. The problem is he was in no rush to get back to the base. Great heads-up play. I don't know if it was Trevino or Austin Wells, who throws down to third. They tag out Julio, and there's 2 outs. The Yankees get the strikeout the next batter, and they're on their way to the postseason. Pretty wild finish to that game. Sam, I won't even bother asking you the question of the two teams that have punched their ticket. Which do you think has a chance to go further? Because we know your answer would be the Yankees, right?
No, but a couple of things about last night, because it was a really cool night in baseball. On the J-Rod thing, very weird. Also, second time in 2 days we've had a weird thing happen with a Mariner at third base in this Yankee series, between Victor Robles stealing what was that, Tuesday night, stealing home with the bases loaded in a 3-0 count.
Oh my God.
Regardless, the thing with Julio that was weird to me, that struck me when I saw the play happen that no one else is talking about, I think Julio Rodriguez didn't know where the ball went, because he saw the bat flying at him. He didn't pay attention to whether the ball was put in play or caught by the catcher. So he seemed like he was kind of just clueless as to what to do, whether it was a line drive, whether it was a sac fly, whatever the case may have been. Yeah, very, very weird circumstance there. And, just 2 1-in-a-million things you see in back-to-back days out west. For the Brewers thing, though, the coolest thing in baseball last night, hands down, the Brewers, obviously, as Jason mentioned, clinched a postseason berth. Jackson Chourio is on their team, and he's 20 years old. Yep. In the clubhouse waiting for him, as we all know, the players will shower each other in beer and champagne after they clinch a postseason berth. They had non-alcoholic beer and champagne in a stroller with a Jackson Chourio jersey on it, waiting for him in the clubhouse. That was the funniest, coolest thing I saw in baseball yesterday.
They should have done high C. I would have done high C, or like Capri Suns in the little packets, that sort of thing. That's what I would have done. So wait a second. You think the Brewers are going to go further than the Yankees in the postseason? Is that what I just heard you say?
I mean, I think they're more poised to because it goes back to something I talked about maybe last week on the show, Jason. There's a bet out there on one of these sports books which league will win the World Series, and they're only hanging the National League at minus 128, which I think is a crazy number. We've seen time and time again the National League and the best of the best in the National League this season are simply better than the best of the best in the American League. So yeah, I do think that at the end of the day, the Brewers, because of what they've done, which we've talked about with David Ardsman with their pitching and just seemingly finding new arms day in and day out whenever somebody goes down, the way that they've constructed that lineup, the youth and experience that they have within it, I trust the Brewers. I'm not saying they're going to go to the World Series, but I could see them playing in the NLCS before I could see the Yankees playing in the ALCS.
The Brewers, by the way, to win it all, 22-1, plus 2,200, as I like to say.
Yeah, because then you got to get through the Dodgers. The number makes sense.
I just think it's hilarious. Everybody's like, you got to get through the Dodgers. Well, that didn't prove to be too hard last year. You know, like,
that's true.
I think, listen, if there's anywhere you could take a shot, I think, on a long shot in the postseason, it's baseball. It has to be baseball because teams get hot. You get pitchers that get going. I mean, my God, you can get the Tigers right now at 100-1 to win the World Series. And by the way, as much as I'd love to sit here, there I am. As much as I'd love to sit here and talk about the Tigers or talk about the Yankees. And you know me, I'm a Yankee fan. As much as I'd like to sit here and talk about the Yankees and talk about the Brewers, the best story in baseball right now is the Detroit Tigers, who are now just one game, essentially 2 games though, out of the wild card spot because they lose both tiebreakers. They lose tiebreakers to the Royals. They lose tiebreakers to the Twins. So they're going to have to get above. They can't just tie those teams. But it's the best story in baseball right now. The Detroit Tigers, 1 game out of a wild card spot. And again, I'll remind people, they finish with the Rays and the White Sox at home for the final 6. It is set up for Tiger Mania. I mean, it's the best story in baseball right now. It's not even close.
I don't know whether the books watched the sports wrap yesterday or that one win meant so much to the Tigers, but we talked yesterday about the Tigers being better than 4-1 to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're down to plus 122 today.
They might wind up being the second playoff team the way it's starting to shape up.
You're right. They might.
Could happen. The Orioles are slip-sliding away. Yeesh. They're going to be hanging on for dear life for that last playoff spot. We're coming back with some football. All right. Segment number 2. Noah Dalzell joins us in 10 minutes. Talk some WNBA with her. She wrote a great piece on the presumptive most valuable player, A'ja Wilson. Interviewed a lot of people for it over on SB Nation. Check that out. She also covers the Celtics, and she is a friend of the program. All right, Sam Yarnell, we've got 16 first-time nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, I could have gotten Jason Cole on, but he can't really talk about it since he's part of the selection committee. So there was no point in getting Jason on. I know if anybody who watches the show know he is a Hall of Fame selector. He's a regular on this show. But what's he going to say? Yeah, these are who we selected. All right, so what do you think about that? Well, I can't talk about that. So I just said we'll just talk about it amongst ourselves. Sam Yarnell. Eli Manning is the most fascinating case study. I think he gets in at some point. Is he first ballot? Is he first go around? And it's hard. I mean, look, and I'm a Giants fan, but I don't think this is an open and closed case. I think he is a Hall of Famer. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He beat one of the best teams, if not the best team of the generation. It's kind of hard to argue against Eli Manning as a Hall of Famer. The question is, does he get in on the first go-around?
I don't think he does, Jason. Yeah, it's very hard to argue that he will not be in the Hall of Fame at some point. And I think the best argument for him being in the Hall of Fame and also for him being our first ballot Hall of Famer has a lot to do with his last name, quite frankly, because that is synonymous with the sport at this point. So it would be a disservice to football if you left a Manning who put up the performance that Eli did over the career that he did out of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No doubt in my mind. First ballot is tough. I agree. Again, the two strongest pieces of evidence towards him being a first ballot Hall of Famer are beating probably the greatest Super Bowl team in the last 30 years and his last name. So I don't think he will on the first ballot, but I don't think it's one of those guys who's waiting and waiting and waiting the way that we see others who essentially just fall off.
The Hall announced 167 modern era candidates for the class Wednesday, including 16 players who became eligible this year. So 16 first-time nominees is what he's included. And again, you are trying to get, over a certain hurdle. So here's the way it works for people who don't understand, because every Hall of Fame has its own thing. Baseball, it's pretty simple. They send out ballots and guys vote and you get in. The way it works for the NFL is different. They have a screening committee, reduces the list of nominees to 50 players from that 167. That happens next month. Then there's a full 50-person selection committee. They'll get the list down to 25 semifinalists, then 15 finalists for the annual meeting that takes place every year before the Super Bowl that'll produce the new class. You got to get 80% of the votes to get in. So that is similar to baseball in that regard. Other guys eligible to get in: Luke Kuechly, obviously great with the Carolina Panthers. Terrell Suggs, who was a beast, obviously with the Ravens, and Adam Vinatieri, who is also he's got to be in. I mean, Mr. Clutch Kicker, Adam Vinatieri's got to get into the Hall of Fame, you would think, as well.
So I think there are 2.5 first ballot Hall of Famers on this list, and you just mentioned 2 of them.
Okay.
Luke Kuechly is no question a first ballot Hall of Famer. Obviously, the concussion stuff cut a 13-year career into an 8-year career. Yeah. But every year, except for his rookie year during that 8-year career, he made either the first or second All-Pro team and was a Pro Bowler. Defensive Player of the Year twice, Defensive Player of the Year once, finished top 3 in DPOY voting 3 times, and won Defensive Rookie of the Year his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, look, you get no argument from me, Sam, when it comes to Luke Kuechly. I mean, the guy's been... was a stalwart throughout his entire career defensively, and you can't punish him, I think, for concussions. It will be interesting to see if he's a first ballot guy. Marshawn Lynch is an interesting one to me. And yeah, I know I mentioned Adam Vinatieri, but is there any doubt that Adam Vinatieri is a Hall of Famer? The question is, does a kicker get in first ballot? It would be, the optics of it would be kind of strange if you had Vinatieri get in on the first ballot, and Eli Manning, who won 2 Super Bowls as a quarterback, beat Tom Brady and the vaunted Bill Belichick Patriots twice. Which, by the way, did you see the thing that Belichick said the other day? He was talking about he had a dartboard, I think, with Eli Manning on it, or a couple of dartboards with Eli Manning on it. Anyway, I think Manning has to get in before Vinatieri. From an optics standpoint, I think that would just be strange if it were to occur the other way around. Marshawn Lynch is an interesting case study, though, because to me, it does feel like Marshawn Lynch. If you talk about a Hall of Fame, right, a Pro Football Hall of Fame, you think of a guy like Marshawn Lynch. When you think about the history of the game and guys that brought attention to the game, sometimes good, mostly good, sometimes bad, you think of Marshawn Lynch, the Skittles, everybody going crazy in Seattle for him when he was playing there with the Seahawks. I would go with Marshawn Lynch as a Hall of Famer. But I also wonder who we think of as Hall of Famers today. And we lost Sam for a second. We had an issue with his audio, so we'll come back to him for something to consider coming up in a little later on in the show. You think of guys that are playing right now. that we would consider already shoo-ins for the Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, is there any doubt that Patrick Mahomes is going to get in? Matthew Stafford, who's had a fantastic career. And again, I think the difference for Stafford is he's got the ring. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Hall of Famer. He got his one Super Bowl. So Aaron Rodgers is obviously a guy that I think we think of as a Hall of Famer. We'll put him in. How about Justin Jefferson? I know it sounds a little early to be having the conversation about Justin Jefferson this early in his career as a Hall of Famer, but I would go with Justin Jefferson as a guy that we'll be talking about one day being in the Hall of Fame. I could put Justin Jefferson there as well. I know it's early, and again, we're just projecting as of now if their careers continue on this trajectory. Who's going to get in? Mike Evans is another guy that I think a lot of people look at as, a guy with a lot of longevity, a guy who's done it for a long time, as being a potential Hall of Famer as well. It's always a fun conversation. Baseball's the most fun when it comes to the Hall of Fame, but we could do it with football too. We'll talk about it with Jason Cole at some point down the line as well. We're coming back. Noah Dalzell joins us on the show to talk WNBA, A'ja Wilson, and a whole bunch more. Welcome back. Lots to do on SportsWrap, including a conversation with our friend Noah Dalzell, who drops by the show. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. Talk some WNBA with her. She covers it for SB Nation. Also covers the Celtics. It's funny. Before we get into the conversation about A'ja Wilson and this lengthy piece you wrote, which made me feel stupid, by the way. So I occasionally write columns for MSNBC and MSNBC.com. And they're like, write these columns, and they're like, keep it under 800 words. And then I see you writing 2,600 word novels on A'ja Wilson, and I'm like, my God, if I'm like sweating bullets writing 1,000 words. So kudos to you on this great piece, which I had a chance to go through last night, concerning A'ja Wilson and the MVP honors that are likely coming her way. Give me some thoughts on the idea of, before I get to A'ja Wilson, I think you're going to start seeing more people like you that cover both the NBA and the WNBA, because I think there's so much interest in people wanting to cover the WNBA that you're going to see more people covering both. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I think, places where there's going to be a WNBA team in the same city where there's already an NBA team, or the ones that already have that combination. Yeah. It's kind of the natural thing to do once the season wraps up. I honestly think that more Celtics reporters would cover the Connecticut Sun if the Sun were based in Boston. And we had a large media group for the one game they had at TD Garden a couple weeks ago. So certainly, I think that's where the league is heading. And there is so much overlap. I mean, the schedule is not perfect. There is a little bit of overlap there, but for much of the year, it's not overlapping. So it's pretty convenient in that sense.
One more on this. Do you think, given how many people turned out for that game in Boston, there could be a WNBA franchise there someday, or does it drip too much into that Connecticut Sun territory?
Yeah, it's tough. I think if there wasn't a team in Connecticut, it would be a no-brainer. But considering the fact that there is, it is the same media market. NBC Sports Boston streams the Connecticut Sun games, and so it would get a little confusing. I think a question is, can the Connecticut Sun potentially relocate down the stretch? And they're owned by a Native American tribe in Connecticut. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I don't think it'll happen in the short term. There's other cities that have been working towards a WNBA team that I think will beat out Boston. But eventually, I think we're going to have a 30-team league, and Boston will probably be one of them. So I just think there's other teams right now that are more ahead of the pack in that sense. But I would love to see Boston get a WNBA team. I think there's definitely an appetite here for it.
You got to spend some time around the Aces and their all-world player A'ja Wilson and players on that team. What was the biggest takeaway you came away with from talking to that team about A'ja Wilson and what she means?
Yeah, I think honestly, there's not anybody else really like her, and that's every superstar you can say that about, and it's true to some extent. But if you watch her teammates' reactions every time she's broken a record in the last year, like, this is like not shade towards any other superstar, male or female, but it's not a scene that we've seen before. That's not normally what people look like when they're celebrating their teammates' individual accomplishments. We've seen plenty of big records being broken in the WNBA and the NBA and other sports over the last few years. And the scenes that we have seen, like the love that they feel for her, it's very unique. And I think that's what made me want to write the story. Is I was watching her break these records and I was watching the celebrations, and you could tell that there was a level of genuine like love and appreciation for her that is different than every teammate appreciates their superstar teammates, but this seems unique to me, at least from my experience covering sports. And so talking to her, it's very clear that like her number one thing is the locker room and like the people in the locker room and what they do off the court. And I think the Aces have been a controversial team because people think they're cocky, and they've had a level of winning that always kind of puts some level of target on their back. But from talking to them, and I talked to Kelsey Plum and Tiffany Hayes, who has a first-year player on the Aces, and it's just evident that A'ja Wilson as a leader and as a person is kind of in a league of her own. And then obviously the advanced analytics and the things she's done on the court are also that. So that's kind of what made me want to pursue those conversations and write that story.
And it feels like to me she's been the beneficiary as much as we talk about the Caitlin Clarks and Angel Reese's and all that. She's been a beneficiary of all this new added attention to the league, because I don't think people realized how good she is, not just now, but how good she's been for the last couple of years. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, if the way that this should go with the WNBA's growth is that the fact that there's younger players that have brought so much attention to the game, and obviously Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are at the head of that conversation. Like in an ideal world, it takes fans who came in because of Caitlin Clark, and now they're aware of all these other great players. And I think A'ja Wilson is at the top of the list of somebody who's been dominant for years now, and maybe wouldn't have gotten the recognition or attention when there weren't as many eyes on the league. I mean, she was the best player in the league for many of the last few years. And I think only now she's a household name more so. And so I think it's great that that's happened. And it's not just her, there's plenty of other great players that I think people didn't know about at any level. The average basketball fan maybe hadn't tuned in and hadn't heard of these great players, and now they are. And so that's kind of the really good piece about everything that's happened over the last year.
Is there a sense that she understands her place in history in the game? And her place in history in the league, and sort of what that means to her, how much longer does she want to play, that sort of conversation. Do you get a sense from her in terms of understanding, legacy and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I understand from her is that she wants to get better at everything every single year. And it's obviously like everybody says that, but you can actually see that she somehow has career highs in literally every category. And she's already won the MVP twice, and she's already won 2 championships. And so that's her thing. I think her thing is that she's not satisfied with greatness. She always wants to kind of come back and be better. And she's just 28 years old. So I don't think there's been conversation around like how much time she has left in this space, because I think she has
playing at the level. Playing at the level she's at now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I took away from our conversation is that she's not thinking about right now, like the greatness that she's accomplishing. I don't think she even knows about some of the records that she's been breaking. She mentioned 1,000 points to me. Like I heard something about 1,000 points. She didn't know that it was like going to be this huge thing. And then obviously 10 days later, it's this huge, massive celebration. But I think it's one of those things where you're so in the midst of your own greatness that you maybe don't even realize what it is that you are accomplishing. And she said normally at the end of the regular season, which is today, that she'll take some time to think about her accomplishments and like maybe take a day, and then obviously shift gears to the playoffs, which start this weekend.
I want to continue the conversation with Noah Dalzell, because we got into A'ja Wilson, talk a little bit more about with her the playoff picture for the WNBA as we get set to move into the postseason. Caitlin Clark, obviously a big source of conversation as well. Obvious Rookie of the Year choice there. We'll continue it all with Noah Dalzell, who hangs out with us from SB Nation. Sports Wrap continues. Good to have you with us on this Thursday edition of the show. Don't go anywhere. Something to consider coming up in about 10 minutes. Sam Yarnell will rejoin the show, and I will cede the floor to Sam Yarnell. He's got something he wants us all to consider. Noah Dalzell's hanging out with us. talking some WNBA with her. Might slip in an NBA question as well with the NBA training camps and preseason and all that stuff right around the corner as well. We talked about A'ja Wilson a bit. Let's talk about this WNBA playoff picture. Obviously, the prohibitive favorites still seem to be the Aces and the Liberty. If there is anything you could see sort of upsetting that apple cart, if there is a team that sort of stands out to you that can turn that upside down, who is it? Is it the Lynx? Is it the Sun? I mean, where's the challenge coming from for either of those two teams?
Yeah, I actually think the Lynx are my favorite to win the championship.
Wow.
I think just what they've been able to showcase, the depth that they have on that roster. There's been so many underrated individual performers this season that I just don't think have gotten the credit that they deserve because they're in a little bit of a smaller media market and they don't draw quite the same attention. But Minnesota has been the best team since the Olympic break. They have been one of the best defensive teams all season. They've been the best three-point shooting team, and they have one of the best players in the league in Napisha Collier. So I think it's just one of those things where they have all the components to win a championship. And it doesn't mean that they're going to get it done. I think the Liberty are a great candidate. And the fact that they have the finals experience of coming off of last year, and they've only been better this year no matter how you slice it. And then obviously you never want to bet against the two-time defending champs in the Las Vegas Aces. So all three of those teams are front runners to me. I've been mostly covering the Connecticut Sun, being that they're the local team here. I think they're also in the mix, but they've had some offensive struggles that I think could plague them a bit in the playoffs. But if I had to pick one team right now, I would go with the Minnesota Lynx as my favorites to win the championship this season.
We all know what Caitlin Clark has accomplished this year. Hey, we made it into segment 2 without even asking a Caitlin Clark question. See, I'm proud of myself. Pat myself on the back there. We all know what she's done and what she's meant to that Fever team. Is making the playoffs simply enough in terms of validating what they've done throughout the season and the growth of that team? Christy Sides as the head coach. Because every time they lose a game, everybody's like, oh, they got to fire Christy Sides. I mean, my God, there is not a head coach in this league, I don't think, that's been more maligned than Sides has. Is simply making the playoffs enough for them for a first step? Or would it surprise you if they were able to win an opening round series? I think right now they match up with Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, which is obviously not a good matchup for them. Or it might be the Aces. I don't remember.
It's Connecticut. No, they're playing Connecticut right now as it currently stands.
Okay.
And tonight will be the final determinant, but it looks like that's going to be the way that it goes. And I think they have actually a really good chance for an upset there.
Wow.
If there's going to be an upset, it's a difficult matchup for Connecticut. The Fever play with a level of pace that I don't know that the Sun thrive in as much. And the Fever have been much improved since the Olympic break. So while they're the number 6 seed, they haven't been a 6 seed since the break. So Connecticut got a little bit of a tough shake there, I think, if they end up playing the Fever. So I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up winning that. It's a best of 3 series, right? So they split those first 2 games on the road. They get game 3 at home in front of Indiana, in front of their home crowd. That's going to be an insane atmosphere to play in. So they have a chance. That being said, I think that the Fever, even if they were to just lose the first 2 games and that's it, that's their season, this season has to be considered a success because not only did you see Caitlin Clark not just meet, but actually I think exceed a lot of the expectations that were set on her, which is kind of a wild thing to think about. But you got huge leaps from other players on the roster. I think Aaliyah Boston continued to grow. Kelsey Mitchell had an incredible year. She's been the second leading scorer after A'ja Wilson since the Olympic break. So I think she's just still somehow flying a little bit under the radar when it comes to national conversations around greatness in the WNBA right now. And then you had contributors like Lexi Hull, other people that kind of stepped up that weren't really expected to be starting level or really impactful players. And so the question for Indiana for me, I think, is can you retain this core? Can you get Kelsey Mitchell back next season? And in the long term, because this is a really promising core. And I think you give them a few years, I think they could win multiple championships if everything kind of goes according to plan here.
Is Sides the right head coach for that team long term?
I don't know. And I don't love speculating about coaches because I don't have enough information to really know how she's been behind the scenes. Usually you're just kind of going off of what the players are telling you, or if you have terrible rotation decisions that everybody disagrees with, that happens all the time too, right? So I know it seems like there's buy-in right now with that team, and it seems like things are trending upwards. So I wouldn't do make any drastic decisions unless there's something that I'm not aware of. If Caitlin Clark comes to the front office and says, I can't play for this head coach, like, there you go. I think it's a little bit of a LeBron effect where any coach that someone like Caitlin Clark has is always going to be heavily scrutinized. And if things go awry, it's always going to be the initial instinct just to blame the coach. And I haven't covered her as much. I haven't been down to Indiana yet, so it's hard for me to say. But it seems to me like there's buy-in, and what they're doing right now is working. And the real question is, can they get better defensively? Because that's been their biggest deficit this season. And obviously defense wins championships. Everybody knows that. So they're going to have to figure that piece out. And whether it's a personnel thing or it's a schematic thing, like that's where they're going to have to make a leap, I think.
I got about 30 seconds left here. NBA's right around the corner. No off season for you. What has surprised you, if anything, or sort of giving you some thoughts on the Celtics as we get ready for training camp and obviously an opportunity to repeat as NBA champions?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a unique situation. They're bringing back the entire same team, basically. Yeah, the only ones that aren't back are O'Shea Brissett and Svi Mihajlovic, so they weren't really in the rotation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just unique to have that much of a returning group off a championship year, and everybody's in their prime ultimately, minus maybe Al is a little bit on the older side, and Drew maybe could get there. But I think with Joe Mazzulla at the helm, like, they're as well positioned to repeat as champions as any team we've seen since the Golden State Warriors. I think that there's a lot of buy-in there to kind of start from scratch and try it again.
Noah, always appreciated. Noah Dalzell with SB Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Odds and Ends wraps up the show in 10 minutes. Some odds for you on Thursday night NFL football, which I will be taking in tonight with friend of the program, Scott Seidenberg. We're going to go and head over to Stations Casino, the sports book over there in Durango. Gorgeous sports book. If you're ever out in Vegas, you want to get off the strip and go somewhere a little quieter, Durango. Go and check it out. All right, Sam Yarnell, something to consider. I cede the floor to you, sir.
All right, Jason, something to consider. Juan Soto, by the time things are said and done with his career, might be the greatest hitter of all time.
Wow.
Obviously, Tuesday evening, Juan Soto hit his 200th career home run. Great. That's very impressive in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
There are not a ton of guys who have ever done that. I think the list is like 150 or so players long.
Okay.
Which, that's a decent amount. Juan Soto is 25 years, and when he did it, 328 days old. There are, as far as I can tell, 6 Major League Baseball players who have hit home runs, who have hit 200 home runs before reaching that age. I'm going to read you their names now because there's something in common with all of them.
All right.
Mel Ott, Eddie Matthews, Albert Pujols, Jimmy Fox, Mickey Mantle, and Alex Rodriguez were the 6 that I could come up with that hit their 200th home run before turning 25 and 320 days old. What does one thing that all 6 of those fellas, maybe except for A-Rod, have in common, Jason Page?
I did me off. No,
they're all Hall of Famers. I think A-Rod probably still is, even with the whole steroids thing, because we talk about it all the time. The writers committee and the old folks, they'll eventually let him in on down the line, even if it's not the proper way on the ballot. Juan Soto has a career, not just this season, because we talk so frequently about how great he is this season in a lineup with him and Aaron Judge during the dog days of summer when it was him and Aaron Judge and just 7 other guys that the Yankees would throw out there every single day. Juan Soto's career batting average is 285. Career. His career OPS is approaching 1,000. He is on average 1.5 times better than the average major league hitter. The numbers that Juan Soto are putting up early in his career with consistency are mind-boggling. We said this in 2019. We said this in 2022. And here we are again in 2024, gawking at the talent that is Juan Soto. Jason, by the time things are said and done, he'll be a hands-down first ballot Hall of Famer, and he might be the greatest hitter of all time.
But, here's what's interesting. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. He's still so young. And barring injury. Now, look. At 25, people might have said the same thing about Mike Trout. And look where we are now in the conversation. Injuries, stuff happens. All it takes is one catastrophic injury even, to change the trajectory. And obviously we don't hope for that for anybody. But, you look at what Juan Soto's accomplished. Here's the one thing I'll say as opposed to comparing him with Judge, though. And here's what Judge has on him. Judge is going to play his entire career in one city. There's value in that. I'm not saying in terms of being better. I'm just saying in terms of the stardom and place in history in the game. Aaron Judge has the American League home run record. And what's recognized by a lot of people as the best single-season home run record. Agree or disagree with the whole Barry Bonds thing and whether it should be recognized. We all know that's part of the conversation as well. So there are things that Aaron Judge has going for him. And I'm only bringing this up because you say he's going to wind up being better than Aaron Judge. But Aaron Judge may have a more prolific place or a higher profile in the history of the game simply because he plays for the Yankees his entire career. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a 500 home run guy. All of those different things that you think about that go with the stardom of the game. Those are things that Aaron Judge has going in his favor. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. Juan Soto is probably going to hit 500 home runs in his career. He's probably going to get to 3,000 hits, considering how early he started in his career. I just simply would say, as a Yankee fan, even if he decides to re-sign with the Yankees and spends the next 6 years there, because we were talking about this with David Ardsma, the day of like the 10-year and 12-year contracts, I don't even think guys want that anymore. I think he's going to want something 5 or 6 years, the option to opt out in case the Yankees start going in a different direction that he doesn't like, all those different things. I agree with you, though. Soto, a fantastic player. I think a future Hall of Famer. We were talking about earlier in the show guys playing now that are future Hall of Famers. I think Soto is definitely a guy we'll be talking about someday as a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and obviously the Baseball Hall of Fame a little different, right? Everyone gets into that one. But I will say, just quickly, on the Aaron Judge thing, because whenever I have a chance to rip Aaron Judge, I got to take it. With regard to the legacy thing, yes, it helps playing for one team. It helps more than playing for one team that team is the Yankees, who get covered even when they're bad.
They do.
Like, even when Aaron Judge was on the 2016 Yankees and the 2018 Yankees, they were still getting tons of coverage as a 70-win ball club and an 80-win ball club. Aaron Judge also has to win a ring.
Oh, I agree.
Juan Soto won a ring at 20.
He did.
Aaron Judge has to win a ring if he wants to live up to that legacy that we've kind of already built for him.
Yeah, look, and that's another advantage of playing in New York. The chances to win rings are better because they're going to spend and they're going to go and do what it takes, rightly or wrongly, good decisions, bad decisions, to try and win a championship. That is something to consider. Brought to you by Sam Yarnell. Odds and ends are next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Thursday. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available for you wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch it on Spotify or listen. Google Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, a whole bunch more. SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. Go and subscribe today. Friday show, we will have Page versus the Prince. Tino Patino will drop by. He does a great job on all things NASCAR. We'll get some thoughts with him as the playoffs continue there. But without any further delay, Sam Yarnell, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Thursday night football. Why not? Let's get in where we fit in. Is that what the kids say? All right, Sam.
I don't think the kids say it, but I do.
Okay. All right. So we got Patriots and Jets. I told you last week, the Page versus the Prince. Yes, I went 2-2, but one of those I told you, the Jets were not going to go 0-2. Told you they would win that game last week against Tennessee, and they did. This week they are at home for the Patriots, a team that has given them problems forever, but that was a different time. That was the Bill Belichick era. It was a time where the Patriots, Bill Belichick had some mind voodoo sort of witchcraft thing that he was able to work on the Jets for so many years. It's not the case anymore. There's no way you pick against the Jets tonight in the money line. I mean, it's minus 260. It's a lot of juice. I get it, but the Jets aren't losing this game tonight. I will take the Jets under 38.5. This is the week where you start to realize that the Patriots are really not that good. Some of that mojo to wear off. I will go under 38.5. I will, if you force me to pick a side, I'll take the Jets minus 6.5. But I don't love it. I don't love it. It's not where I would go. If I had one pick to make on this game, from the easy stuff, I'm not talking about props and all that stuff, I would take under 38.5.
Give me the Patriots. Give me the +6.
What?
Take it or leave it. I'll take them on the money line too. First time Aaron Rodgers has to go up against someone who he used to play against. Gerard Mayo knows exactly what is coming at him between Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. He's seen it all before from one of the most important parts of the defensive unit. Give me the Patriots 6 ways to Sunday in this game. I like the under also. I don't think that there are points to be had in this game. We're talking about like a 9-0 or a 9-6 finish in this one. Props wise, give me Aaron Rodgers to throw a pick. Again, back to my Gerard Mayo point. I think he's going to throw the ball a lot, and I think Gerard Mayo is going to see it coming. Aaron Rodgers to throw a pick +110 out there in that market. And then I'll ladder play Ramondre Stevenson in this game. I think they are going to run it down the Jets' throat in this game, and I know that Jets defense is formidable, but the run defense is severely struggling without Hassan Reddick in that lineup. So give me Ramondre Stevenson rushing yards, rushing plus receiving yards, whichever way you want to take it. I like it all the way up to over 100 at +425, but I'd play it more respectfully at over 70.5 on the rushing yards. Ramondre will have a big game. I like the Patriots. I don't like a lot of points. This is going to be a good one.
Do you like Ramondre Stevenson +105? Anytime touchdown?
Yeah. +105 is a fine number. I wouldn't.
I don't know if they're going to score. The problem on the any touchdown thing is there's a scenario where the Patriots don't get into the end zone at all. You know what I mean? I mean that wouldn't shock me if they're kicking a bunch of field goals because that Jets defense kind of gets strong in the red zone. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any touchdown guy that I would like on the Patriots. How about 100 yards? How about 100 yards passing in each half for Jacoby Brissett at +750? By the way,
no chance, no shot.
Value.
No, we know that Jets passing defense. No. It's so funny. So you said that about the Patriots not scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
It made me want to go look, and so I did. There's a market out there for first team touchdown scorer, obviously. The favorite for the Patriots is Ramondre Stevenson at +235, excuse me. Right behind Ramondre Stevenson at +380 is no New England Patriots touchdown scorer as their first team touchdown. So
what's the number? What's the number on that?
So for Ramondre to score the Patriots' first touchdown +235, for the Patriots not to score a touchdown +380.
I kind of like that. I kind of like the +380 on no touchdown. That's got some.
I would stick with Ramondre Stevenson anytime. I'd play that.
Why not bet them both? Why not bet them both?
Sure, you could. I would also.
I think if you bet them both, you're going to hit one of them.
Well, if you're going to bet them both to be the first team touchdown scorer. I'm saying take Ramondre anytime if you really want to play a touchdown scorer. I also think Antonio Gibson's worth a look here, just because of the nature of how I think this game will go. It's going to be a lot of running in the ball into the end zone rather than throwing it. So Antonio Gibson for an anytime touchdown would be my other look for touchdown scorers.
All right. Sam Yarnell, ladies and gentlemen. If you lose, it's his fault. If you win on mine, I expect a cut. It's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to Noah Dalzell for stopping by the show. Can you believe it? Tomorrow's already Friday. Tino Patino will be here because it's a NASCAR Friday. We'll have a recap of the Thursday night game as well. We'll see you all then. Have a good one, Sam.